What's my best side?
Let me see.
What's my best side?
I mean, I think they're both pretty good. This one has your little,
Oh yeah, this is
like a
I
little.
went to my new dermatologist this past week.
That's a humbling
It,
experience.
yes, it actually is very much. You nailed it, and that's one of the first things. She was like, "I'm going to talk to the assistant, and I'll say a bunch of words, so don't pay any attention to me." And then she like looks really close on your body, like, and she's like, "Something venous filament, whatever." And then she went over my face, and she was like, "Sebaceous mole," and I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Don't worry." I said, "Don't listen to me."
That's like telling you not to listen to
No,
somebody
yeah,
is,
so
I mean,
dangerous.
what are we thinking
Oh,
is
I'm
going to happen there?
for alert. Welcome to another edition of the Wicked Opportunities podcast live. Of course, you probably know Yvette and myself
Hi.
if you're tuning in here. And if not, it's great to see
It's great to meet you.
you.
What an introduction that was with the dermatologist talk. We don't normally talk about skin issues on this
No.
podcast.
Do you think also I might make a good James Bond? Which side would be best? I was just reading an article on who the next James Bond would be. So
Oh,
I think Henry Cavill would probably be a good James Bond.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, Superman and all that.
Oh, right,
Cavill.
right, right, right.
He
Sorry.
was actually in a movie last year, and he played a character that is the inspiration for the original James Bond.
Has there ever been, I mean, I guess James Bond has to be British.
No, no, no. Yeah, well, he has to have a British accent.
So like some kind of Hispanic Latino star
Might be tough. They actually are saying there's
might be.
two Indian gentlemen in the
Well,
run
there
for
you
it,
go.
and two African American gentlemen in the run for it. So, and I think it would all be great. We live in an age when you gotta change things up a little bit. This whole James Bond thing is a little patriarchal, white colonist kind of anyway.
So lightly, if you watch any of, especially the OGs.
James. Yeah, no, yeah. Who was your
Yeah.
favorite James Bond?
Um,
There was Pierce Brosnan. You got the original Sean Connery. You got Roger Moore.
I
Um,
don't know. I do love Roger Moore,
you got
but
the guy that just did it not long ago. The last guy, what's his name? Daniel Craig.
mm,
And he also was in these recent movies too, where they're really funny. It's like he's a detective from the South and he has to solve a murder, and the whole family's in. Those are good. I like those.
yeah, I think I'm more of
I'm
the,
a Roger Moore fan. Everybody's like, what are you
yeah,
talking about?
yeah,
But I
yeah,
just always thought he was cool, live and
yeah,
let die.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good.
But Sean Connery, I mean, he's the original.
You're a wealth of pop culture information. People come to you for knowledge on complexity science, but honestly, they're missing out.
This is a part of complexity science. They just
Is
don't
it?
realize it.
Is
Yeah.
it?
They
Is
just don't
it?
realize it.
Well, we have a good topic to dive into, but I just can't help myself because I have something here.
What is that?
You know
I do,
full well what it
I
is.
do know what it is. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
And Nicole's gonna kill me because obviously we don't have a link for this yet because we're just not ready. But I feel like the people on the live stream are our friends
They are
and
friends.
they should get like
No one's
first.
gonna kill you. I love this. It's like, just let me tell a really short story before you do this. So I'll make it super short.
Okay,
Frank is the person in this office that shares things prematurely,
often.
often. I always get in trouble for it.
It's not that you get in trouble for it, but we do
No, I
preemptively
do get in trouble
say,
for it.
we'll just say, it'll be just the three of us in the leadership team, and we'll say, Nicole or I will say, now, we probably shouldn't share this yet, right? Like we'll say, like we'll bend up
I,
at each other.
I
I mean,
know.
I know you
I
know.
know.
I know
I know
you know.
what's happening.
And it's
I know
really
what's happening.
just for
And I'm
you.
just sort of semi-ignore it. But
So we probably shouldn't put this on LinkedIn
yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
And he's over there typing
Yeah. And
as we
then
speak.
delete, 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 delete. So as you see this thing
Please
that
do.
nobody was supposed to share,
Do you delete it?
right, you're right. I don't.
I already gave like a sneak peek of this from the printers. The printer got real offended that
So
we asked for
Nicole,
proof.
I get to join team punishment. Team.
Oh.
So
Anyway,
this
so
is
for those of you that are familiar with our trend cards, they sort of look like trend
I
cards,
do.
but they're not.
Huh?
I don't, this is probably going to be flipped over. They are, this is probably, I'm not doing a good job. They are tool cards. So look at how pretty they are.
So if you are familiar with what's going on at my.tfsx.com, you'll know that there are recipes on there that contain tools, and two, three, four of those tools will make up different recipes. And so far, you've only been able to see those digitally, which is great.
Yeah.
But now there are actual cards you can hold in your hand
We
of
feel,
different
yeah, at the
tools.
end of the day, it became very clear to us that there's this lack of object permanence when things are only digital. And especially for those that are digital immigrants, like Frank and myself, sometimes it's like, oh, I even forgot the toolkit was there because it only exists online.
That's right.
So one of the reasons we created this physical manifestation, you could see our friend Lori. This is a great like look back at some of our previous sessions on the pictures. I love them. Is that these can be on your desk. This is a participant from South Africa. I don't know how well those are showing up. But these could show up on your desk and you could take them with you because they have the tips or the
That's right.
steps.
Everything's on there.
But they're really powerful when you use them in tandem with your membership on MyTFSS, because those that are members of the collective on TFSX, one of the many benefits, who's this? If you can see it. One of the many benefits is that you have that full toolkit with the recipes and downloadable templates and all of that. So this is another, I think, great addition to that process.
So if you're already familiar with the tools, you know they follow the natural foresight framework of discover, explore, map, and create. Here's this one that Yvette was already holding. It's a create card, and this is the tool of art of decision making. But you'll see causal layered analysis in there,
Super
and
fun.
features wheels, and
Here's all the
S-curve map building, and all those tools are in there. And each card shows you how to actually use the tools.
It's probably all the words were probably reversed, but you get the idea. And it's not meant to be a commercial for this, but I literally just got them. And I'm a nerd and I'm excited. And
it's cool.
We have a pallet of them, so they will be available for purchase very soon.
There's pallets in the office now, so they are going to be available. Hello, Nan and Laura and Ron and Robin. It's good to see all of you.
So as soon as those are available, we will post the link.
Let you know.
It's not available yet. So we're continuing today on our journey down the Wicked Opportunities archives, but also realizing how evergreen our Wicked Opportunities mindsets really are. I know many of you have been with us throughout 2025, so you're familiar with what we're doing, but we're basically revisiting the first set of podcasts. There were 7 months of them where we walked through 7 shifts. And really introduced, that was when we formally sort of introduced from a podcast perspective, the Wicked Opportunities philosophy and perspective. And today's topic or session and focus, I forget which month it was. I think it was like 1, 2, 3. I think it was the fourth month.
I think, yeah.
But it truly encapsulates, honestly, they all obviously have to do with Wicked Opportunities, but I really like this live stream's focus and that month's journey. Because if you're going to listen to one set of podcasts, these 4 weeks and this live stream is really a great one, whether you're new to Foresight or you've been a while, because for those that are new to Foresight, it's great because you're going to not develop bad habits. Those of you that have been here for a minute, it might be an opportunity for you to challenge what you've been doing or how you've been viewing Foresight and really sort of unlearn potentially some behavior. Today, we're going to be talking about this idea that we need to shift our perspective from a mindset of battling VUCA, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, shifting from battling VUCA to really embracing the long now. And there's like all of these podcasts and live stream topics, there's many layers to this conversation. It's truly an onion. And that's what I love about this. It's going to sort of meet you where you are and where you are in your foresight experience or journey or learning. And, but this particular one, I love the ones when I can remember, like I personally having an aha moment, because
Mhm.
just so that we're clear, I think any good foresight professional or any person that is a
That's right.
true student of their field, which I think we all should be, whether you're in foresight or not.
Right.
And I think you should be learning as you're going,
Yeah.
even if you are in a facilitation or an expert like role. And I remember when we sort of scaffolded and scripted, to the extent that we script things, this set of podcasts, and then when we recorded it, and developed the materials for it, I remember like just another level clicking for me
Yeah.
about what this really
Yes.
means to stop this. It's on one level, it's stop fear mongering, right? Because the idea of like we have to, battle VUCA, we have to stop this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Um, and then there's a whole nother level of the sort of focus that we have in the field often, more mainstream, more of the publicized focus of foresight, which is to peer around the corner. We say we don't predict, but we do an awful lot of predicting.
Yeah.
Yeah, or attempting to predict.
Yeah, I was telling you earlier that I just got the chance to record this really cool panel with three amazing individuals, Amalia Deloney, Michelle Shevin, who was the last creating Foresight Fuel Action interviewee. And you can catch that at my.tfsx.com. And but she's on this new panel as well, and so was Jen Brasili. And a lot of people might know Jen Brasili. She's taught at several different universities. She's a design person. She's studied under all these famous designers,
Mhm.
and she's sort of become a hot commodity herself. And she's just really humble and smart. And she knows the field of foresight because a lot of designers do now, but she doesn't
Mhm.
consider herself a futurist.
Yeah.
And so she had this outside in view, which is
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
And that was one of the points of the panel anyway, was a sort of challenge foresight, and it needs sort of a come to
Yeah.
Jesus moment. I didn't mean to be offensive there, but the
Yeah.
phrase come to Jesus moment,
Yeah.
right? And and she was saying, like, look, from somebody that's outside the field, I'm just going to tell you the truth from what I see is that, and you had a cool take on this a little while ago, but she said, one of the mantras in foresight is foresight doesn't try to predict. And she was like, and yet that's all it seems to me that the field's doing. It's like trends and how will it go and
Yeah.
what's going to happen next. And it's just prediction.
Yeah.
So I think almost like the field's saying, like, foresight doesn't try to predict, is like trying to convince itself. It's like, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And a friend of you and I was saying just yesterday on our dragonfly journey as well that it's like really this is where the formal field started. It was about prediction
Yeah.
in the 1950s, and there is a whole different side of the field where it's like futures thinking is a natural, biological, psychological, social, sacred dynamic, but the proper professionalization of the field started around the 1950s of what are the Soviets going to do next, and could there be World War III? And the military got hold of this, and they were trying
Yeah.
to predict an SRI that became, broke in half and became a little bit of, IFTF today, and they're on the right course of, but this is where it all started, was this
Yeah.
prediction thing.
I think it's interesting too, because like you had shared in our workup to this conversation today about how um she went on to say, and by the way, that talk comes out later this year.
Yeah, that'd be
So
great.
there's no link for it yet, but
No, no, not
um
yet. Sorry.
tease. You're a tease.
See, I just did it
No,
again.
no link
I
for the
just did it
cards,
again.
no link for the
But
talk.
Michelle Shevin is,
Is that one
it
is,
is
yeah.
out, and it's amazing. It's just
But
absolutely amazing.
you were saying how she said that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It
Yes,
becomes a self-fulfilling
that's
prophecy
right.
that we only promote these sort of trends, and then that's the future that unfolds. And I was struck by that statement because we often talk about foresight being co-opted, but in this regard, it's frustrating because this is one of the most powerful things about foresight, in my opinion,
Mm,
is I wouldn't call it self-fulfilling prophecy, but rather this idea that by partaking in foresight exercises and embodying a foresight perspective, that we can create the future we want to see happen, right? We are the authors of the future. And so often the lack of agency and the lack of recognition and the fact that it's a privilege, unfortunately, that's only a few have to be able to sort of create the future, is why we end up sort of saying, oh, the mainstream folks or the dominant narrative is what's determining the future, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's right.
I can flip that on its head, wicked opportunity style, and say, actually, that's one of the most powerful tenets and outcomes of well-practiced foresight,
Yeah.
is that you find that by acknowledging the things that are changing around you, by addressing your own biases and assumptions, by collaborating and sensing together, and by being aspirational in our visions for the future, we can start to create action in the present, because that's really what it's about. And we're going to talk about more about the idea of the long now and how that relates. But I just wanted to share because I love these old maps. Old, they're not even that old, but
They're not. They're still relevant. And I thought what you said a few minutes ago was really great is that, when we created these, it was at the beginning of the pandemic. So, I mean,
yeah,
almost 5 years ago now,
yeah,
which seems like a long time, but it's 60 months
yeah,
ago.
yeah,
And it went on into 21 and 22, or at least through 21. And, um, and they're more relevant now than they were then, I
yeah.
think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think they showcase how and we talk about, this being evergreen, but it's really the foresight mindset and tools and processes that are evergreen. It is the it is the operating system that running in the background makes us continually um, not just be prepared, but like be able to leverage the environment that's around us and not be fearful of it. So I love this focus of moving from VUCA to the long now. If you've been around Foresight for more than 5 seconds, you've heard someone say VUCA or some other acronym. VUCA is very popular. It was coined by the U.S. military. We use it in our materials as well. It's a great way, if you're new to this practice, it is a great way to sort of meet people where they are, because people do feel overwhelmed by the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity. And so as a call to action and as a recognition of kind of their feelings, VUCA is helpful. However, oftentimes in the field, it's presented as the enemy, something to fear, something to overcome. So we have to, in order to succeed, I have to change uncertainty to certainty.
Yeah.
I have to somehow calm the volatility and make things more simple and less ambiguous. And it's impossible.
Oh, yes, and your statement and say that, and take it one step further and say, I believe that's why the VUCA acronym exists.
Yeah.
And there's an important point behind that, a very, very critical central point to what we're saying about shifting away from VUCA to a long now. It's not never using the acronym VUCA again, because nobody's going to be convinced of that anyway. Because we do wake up and we feel like, as a matter of fact, more than several years ago, we feel like we're in a VUCA world, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so this acronym was created, I would say, primarily from a mindset of like, oh my gosh, it's too bad that there's increasing
Yeah,
volatility,
exactly.
uncertainty,
Yeah,
complexity,
it's a negative
ambiguity,
thing.
and
Yeah.
how do we solve that?
Yeah.
Instead of, and there's a couple of things we're going to do here, but let's start with this one, that if we were to look at the world a different way and approach the world a different way, then VUCA wouldn't mean something, as you were already starting to say, something bad to us.
Right.
But it's actually the way the world always was. And
Yeah.
if we were to fall in line with that or relax into the hands of VUCA, so to speak,
Yeah.
which sounds like a very hard thing to do,
Yeah.
then it would shift our mindset. It's like, oh, you didn't know the world was always volatile.
Yeah.
You thought it just became
Yeah.
volatile.
It's one of the reasons why I am just absolutely obsessed with CLA, because in reality, it's the way we frame things. So it's not VUCA one way or another, but it's this idea that we're battling VUCA,
Yes.
that we're trying to overcome VUCA. And you can see
Fighting the
that.
way the world actually is.
You can see that's how we frame the wicked problem in this
right.
series. And then unpacking, why is it that we frame it that
Why
way.
do we frame it that way?
And getting all the way down to it's always about the patriarchy, honestly. I mean, really,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
honestly.
always like to, when I'm writing now, it's like I sort of took up Vanessa Machado's, idea of like modernity slash coloniality. She's
Yeah,
like, so that you understand when we say modernity, we're not talking about just modern times. It's
yeah,
modernity is a thought process that's extractive, exploitative. So
yeah.
modernity slash coloniality. But now it's like I don't know when to stop because it's like modernity slash coloniality slash capitalism slash patriarchy slash something.
Can we just call it shit show? Like just for
Feel
short.
like there's an acronym in there.
Yeah, shit show.
Machekapod something,
Come up with what SHIT stands for.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
Sorry, I don't know.
anyway, you could see this map and all of the podcasts related to this topic, the original podcast on the course that we created on my TFSX. It's free to subscribers. That is the Thriving in Uncertain Times podcast. So, or excuse me, course on my TFSX. So that visual along with all the other materials.
That's
But
right.
so when we did the original podcast, we always shift from a wicked problem
Right.
to a wicked opportunity. And in
What's
this
a new way of seeing the world?
right. And so in this case, we went from the wicked problem of battling VUCA to the wicked opportunity of embracing the long now. And I'm sure most of everyone that's listening sort of is familiar with the long now, but just as a point of
Well,
reference.
Stuart Brand was the one who created the Long Now Foundation many, many
Mhm.
years ago out in
Yeah.
California,
Yeah.
and sort of made that concept more. He popularized the concept of the long now. Of course, it manifests in different words and phrases and ways of thinking, but and so it was nothing. It's nothing new, but the concept is that uh, I could say I'm holding this pen right now,
Hmm.
and then I just put it down, and so now only lasted a few seconds in human time, right?
Right.
But then I could say right now people are wearing pants, and that would have been from something from hundreds of years ago
Yeah.
through today and probably last on for a while until we decide that there's a different kind of clothing we want to wear and pants aren't in style anymore.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm gone when when the pants are around.
I think you're in good shape for
You're
that,
in good
Jasper.
shape. Thank.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Wow, Stephen. Wow. Do you hear what just happened there? There was something implied, I think. Um,
I think we'll still be wearing pants. And
you're gonna bury me in my pants.
yep, you're good. You're good, sir.
Jeez, I just don't know how to take it. It's a
Don't-
Thursday.
I don't think the
Thursday.
pant trend is going anywhere before you leave us.
Do you know something I don't? Oh, futurist. I plan to stick around for a while. You don't know that. As Joseph Force would say, preposterous. We might start wearing pants pretty soon and I'll still be around.
That's the angle you take. It's not that you're going to live a long, long time. It's just that pants are just
Going in the next couple of years. Because I think you might have been right about the other part. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, it's not much longer now.
a moment ago. You're like, I hope pants don't go away. But you did a 180 on that real
I did.
quick
You gotta stay nimble.
when you were
You gotta stay nimble.
with your own
You
mortality
gotta
and
stay nimble here.
lack of pants.
You gotta stay nimble. I love in the chat, the pants just appear.
Mm.
Perfect.
Gave up hard pants during the pandemic.
And now it's just stretchy pants.
There's no snaps or any kind of harsh materials in my closet at this moment.
And yes, I mean skirts are so comfortable. And look, I was automatically went to the Scottish, and
Yeah,
the Scottish
sure.
skirt,
Yeah.
playing golf in a skirt.
There's
It's like,
pluses and minuses. As Nicole is saying, not in Florida. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen in the skirt.
That's true. That's true.
Oh my God, we really, really
Um,
everything
My-
is sweaty. We've gone officially off the rails.
We're off the rails.
That's good.
Pin, pants, long now.
Okay, wow. Let's bring it back to the long
Yes.
now, guys.
But then, we could say something. I'm not thinking of a good, metaphor right now, but something that lasts a long time is the now. Our now gets stretched depending on what you're talking about. Right now, people view marriage this way, centuries and centuries of time, right? That's
Yeah.
the now is long, right? And so this idea of the long now, stretches the concept of now to be
Mm.
past, present, and future, and what we're talking about when we say now, which I think is a little bit different from long-termism.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I think for sure. I think that the relationship between the past, present, and the future, in my opinion, is not really spoken about enough within the foresight realm.
right. Yeah,
And understanding the linkage between those, not just because they're on the same timeline, but understanding how I think about the future obviously impacts the things I do in the present. But
exactly.
all the other ramifications of that timeline being
I mean, that's
connected.
a completely different
I
podcast,
I know.
because the
Sorry.
whole idea, it's like I think there's a lot of people that think the seeds of the future are definitely in the present. And I would say, God forbid, because if that's the case, we'll never break free from, right? And so we're looking at alternative realities, which is a part of what we're talking about
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
But um, definitely it could be, and often it is. And I think that's the problem with VUCA is we're often like, how do we make better what we've already got?
Mm.
Um, and uh, and so oftentimes we do see the future, the seeds of the future are in the present because we just keep replicating, but with
Yeah.
like a flair, and a robot
Yeah.
and a little bit of an AI, but continuing on with the system that we already have. I would rather see the past be in the future in terms of what did we lose in terms of dreams paid over and ancestral, dreams, right?
Yes.
So that's a completely different podcast. But I think, this idea of battling VUCA is so important in terms of the long now, because it says, look, we're not trying to overcome the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. As a matter of fact, complexity being there is a good point to make, right? Because we have it drilled in our heads so strongly that complexity is our enemy, and we need to simplify. And I'm not even sure that simplification is, I know that I'll probably get hate mail about this, but I'm not even sure simplification is a real thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a concept that we're like, I want to simplify my life, so I want to get back to nature or go hug a tree or do a thing. And all those things are really complex
Hmm.
because complexity is not complication. It's a way of intertwining ourselves with what really matters. Life is complexity, and complexity is co-creation and cooperation, and those things are complex. And so I'm just using that to say VUCA doesn't have to be a bad thing. That's the way we're framing it because we stand separated and siloed from life itself, which life itself is VUCA. And when we fall into the arms of VUCA, instead of seen as a bad thing that needs to be overcome, we need to be unvolatile and we need to be certain and non-complex.
Yeah.
Then we fall into a trap of just repeating the same future as the present over and over.
There's also an element of control here,
It's control. It's
right?
about control.
So it's a perceived control, thinking that we can control, but also I think when we as a society or as a time, when we make it the goal to simplify,
Yeah.
that is in a strong way a method of control,
This is exactly right. It's
right?
exactly what I'm saying. It's like what is simplification? It's
Yeah.
nothing but the desire to control, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's interesting and it's a desire though for those in power to control those who are not, right? So because God forbid those of us, with some sentience begin to realize that, wait a minute, leaning into volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity is more in line with nature
Yes.
and who we're meant to be. And this other way is artificial.
That's right.
And as you said,
I'm
falls
so
into
glad
those
you used that word.
those dominant narratives
That's right.
again and perpetuates
Perpetuates.
the power structures that exist. And it's such a trick. It is such a trick that we have been conditioned to seek quantification, productivity,
Yeah.
efficiency,
Yeah.
simplicity as the end all be all, as the gold star of everything that we do, when it's in fact the organic, the messy, the complex
Yes.
that is much more in alignment with who we are as a part of nature and
This
as
is one of the
people.
reasons I asked Jen Brasili to be on our panel, which comes out in a couple of months, is because she wrote an article saying, that Rilke wrote, and we often quote from it, The Future Enters Into Us. He wrote a poem called Letters to a Young Poet. And so she was playing off that, and she said, Letter to a Young Systems Thinker. And she was like, "Hey, systems thinker, I know you want to see A equals B moves to C, and if I move D, then we'll have more of A or less of B or whatever." But she's like, "That's not how the world works. It's messy, it's itchy, it's swampy, and it is those things. It's not something to overcome."
Yeah.
And this is why we just had Sonia Blano on not long ago. She was like, instead of like trying to chart a path through the ocean, we need to follow the wayfinders who were able to feel the
Yeah.
water and feel the wind and say, I know exactly where to go. And using those connective elements, as Nan says in the chat, simplicity is just a hypothetical construct, and so is control.
Yeah.
They're just made up hypothetical
Yeah.
constructs, and they don't align with reality.
Hmm.
I think, another good thing to say here before we sort of leave this, and I know we're talking about alternative realities and the long now, and we touched on a little bit, was this idea that Timnit Gebru came up with several years ago, which is this another acronym that she coined called TESCREAL. And it's a very long TESCREAL. It's like
Listen,
supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
listen. Can we talk about the
But it
acronym
has
thing?
become very popular.
Okay, but
It's everywhere.
can we just, can I just, for as an aside, I'm sure that these thought leaders are way smarter than I, way more accomplished than myself. However, I am just going to put it out there that the purpose of an acronym
It's short.
is to help us create a shorter, more, memorable
Yeah.
version of a longer idea.
That's
And
it.
when we go supercalifragilisticexpialidocious on these acronyms,
That one, by the way, so
we're
super.
we're going to talk more about acronyms here in a second. But okay,
So
TESCREAL.
so yeah, TESCREAL is. Let me see
Very
if I
impressive, Nicole,
let
that
me
you
see
got
if I can
that.
do this. By the
Yeah,
way, if I
yeah.
can remember, TESCREAL. Before you write it,
Oh
before you
no,
write it, before you
she's
write
not
it,
going to know because you're delayed.
it's too late.
It's delayed in the
Yeah.
chat. It's
So the
delayed.
acronym means transhumanism, extropianism, singularitarianism,
I'm done.
cosmism, rationalism, effective altruism, and long-termism.
I'm sorry. I think I might be done after that one, but keep going.
Well, the important thing here is Timnit was saying that this is how the oligarchy thinks, who are sort of leading us into the future right now. 5 or 10 or 15 really rich white older guys
Yep.
are plotting out our future. And hasn't that always been the story? But it's more now than ever before. With the singularity,
What could go wrong,
with the
honestly? It's sort of like this. This is them in the background.
with the with your Silicon Valley is what I meant to say. Uh, cult of white techno supremacists.
Oh my God. If anyone is playing Foresight Bingo right now, you're drunk if you're taking shots every time. That was a
And
lot.
so this idea that
Autonomous
we
vehicles.
can live forever.
AI.
Earth doesn't matter. We're gonna leave the planet anyway. We're gonna reach for robots and AI are gonna take over. What are humans needed for?
They're gonna solve all our problems.
Yeah, and this idea of effective altruism is like we can use data to find out who needs help and who doesn't. We're not going to use our heart. We're going to use data and say this is the best place to put our money.
Hmm.
Sorry that you're hurting too, but you're not the best place for me to invest
Yeah.
in. And long-termism, which is what we were talking about a moment ago.
Yes.
That it's like I'm only from a Silicon Valley hyper tech solutionist perspective. I'm going to plot out where humanity is going, and we're not really talking about are the futures that we're planning helping in the present? Are they making a difference in the here and now?
I just want to pause because I do think that it's it might be mind blowing for people to say, to learn or to hear today that the idea of long-termism. That's not what we're striving for
That's right.
in foresight, in the sense that, as you just described, folks that are in positions of power today are crafting this long-term, vision of our future that doesn't really center on us at all. It barely includes us, to
That's
be
right.
quite honest. It doesn't include the earth. It doesn't, and that stands in stark contrast to a concept like the long now, which is much more aligned with what we believe, how foresight should be practiced, which is that our visions of the future uh, should be transformative, should include transformative aspirational visions, which then inform and improve the present
That's right.
and impacts that place
The
that we
way
are
you think
today.
about the future should directly impact the actions you take today.
And it's not just about, it is in part about creating better futures, but it's also about creating better presents and recognizing that, the life that we're living today is worth making better, and not
That's right.
just,
Yeah.
sort of seeing where the trends are going.
As Dougal Hyde said, it's like, are we working towards a world worth living for?
Yeah.
And I think it was in the interview that I did with Michelle Shevin that we, might replace the word world with future. Are we living for a future worth living for?
Mhm.
But I like the original quote because he's like a world. And that really is what we should be aiming for in foresight more than anything. It's not about alternative futures, it's about alternative realities. And can we shift our realities from a technic to as the philosopher Federico Campagna says, from technic to magic with a K on the end. It's like instilling spirit and sacredness back into our life. And I think that's a part of the
Yeah.
VUCA problem. Is it's epistemic uncertainty. It's focused on the data and the hard, volatile. There's got to be a way to solve it, and uncertainty, how to solve it, and not flowing with what is life itself, And it's one of the reasons why we created this acronym, talking about creating acronyms again.
Yeah, we were like, yeah, you know what we need around here is one more
You do.
acronym.
You need one more acronym. Um, and I've seen sort of others doing this as well recently, but it's been several years ago now that, and as a response to this exact conversation we're having, actually,
Yeah.
is where it sort of stemmed from. It's like, what if instead of looking at the worlds of VUCA, we looked at it as being alive, ALIVE.
I see
And
what you did there.
yes, I thought it was better than VUCA because, like,
Yeah.
what does VUCA mean?
No, it means
But
nothing.
alive
A
is a
lot
word.
is a word.
And so the acronym of alive and the words that alive mean to be alive. And so, see what
Nice job
see
on
what I
that.
did there?
Let me give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Very
you,
good.
thank you.
Very good. Very good.
And easy for people to remember.
Yeah, really good.
And so
So
live.
let's go through the Alive
So
acronym.
the ALIVE acronym stands for what is this? Hilarious.
Okay.
Um, so abductive, liminal, interconnected, vibrant, and emergent. And
All
it
things
was
that we talk about all the time
all
in our
things we talk
natural
about all the
foresight
times
practice.
that we
Yeah.
talk about, and they all stand not necessarily in opposition to, but in fleshing out exactly what we're saying from this VUCA acronym. As a matter of fact, I could say this just by saying, like, accept volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity as being natural.
Yeah.
But another way to look at it is like, if I'm embracing the complexity, if I'm embracing the long now, if I'm embracing life itself, if I'm embracing alternative realities, then I'm going to be thinking, along with the way the rest of the cosmos thinks, that things are abductive, they are liminal, they are interconnected, they are vibrant, and they are emergent. And if I think that way, then the future is going to be a living, agentic place for us together
Yeah.
that we can create worlds worth living for.
And again, it's so powerful, the lens through which we view the world. And
Exactly.
that's,
I can't help but hear Bio and Nora Bateson when we're doing this because they
yeah.
would all say, like, this is the way the world is. Stop fighting it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that as foresight practitioners, as thought leaders in this field, all of us, that those that are listening to us, both live and on the recording, have a responsibility. Have a very, very important responsibility to when we introduce people to these ideas within foresight and futures thinking, we have a choice early on.
Yeah.
And I know it's super tempting. It's so tempting to introduce these concepts through fear because we know we're going to get people's attention right away, right? We're going to get them acknowledging, yes, absolutely, it's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. All of those things, I hate it. And so you will get a knee-jerk reaction. But if you're looking to really change perspectives, develop cultures of future thinkers, then I truly implore you to take what might seem like the harder path here and introduce foresight and futures thinking with a lens
Please do
of
it.
aspiration,
Please.
with a lens
Becky.
not of fear, but of oneness, with
Yeah.
an understanding that we all have this capability within us. It doesn't need to be
Yeah.
downloaded into us, it's already there,
Yeah.
with a recognition that it is truly natural to
Yes.
think this way
Yes.
and everything else is artificial, to take away the idea that this is woo woo or somehow not
It's life.
practical or it's not efficient or it's not effective. Trust me when I say that foresight efforts fail when they attempt to intertwine themselves or attempt to make implementation easier by mimicking the current system. It is just like competitive intelligence. It's just like market intelligence. It's just like consumer insights. It's
Yeah.
not.
It's not.
It's not.
It
And if you're
shouldn't be.
and if it is, it's
Yeah.
because you're not really doing foresight. And
Yeah.
so it takes courage, it takes effort, but I promise you the results are much greater,
Yeah.
so much
So
greater.
much better.
And it's,
Yep.
this alive concept. I know that it's this short ebook that you wrote a few years ago, but we have gotten so much amazing feedback on it. And so I know
Yeah.
Nicole dropped it in the chat.
Well, like just like Robin is saying in the chat, she says, I like this for the natural framing. And then she talks about BANI, right?
Yeah.
So it's another acronym.
Yeah.
Brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible, evokes terror rather than acceptance is exactly the point.
Yeah.
I think, those who, speak of BANI do it just like they do VUCA. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is sort of how we're reacting to the
Yeah.
world. We feel things are brittle and they're incomprehensible. And the reason that we're feeling that way, because I admit people are feeling that way.
No, yeah, we're not.
BANI is real, VUCA is real, but
Yeah.
why is that
Yeah.
the acronym? Because we're responding the wrong way to the world.
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
It's not suggesting that this isn't the reality for a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
It's
But why is that the reality?
but
We have
rec-
to shift reality.
but recognizing that by putting forth these acronyms and promoting these acronyms,
That's right.
which we do as well, we talk about VUCA in our practice. I already said that. But by doing that and only doing that
Yeah.
and leading with that, you're perpetuating
Perpetuating it.
the idea that the future is a scary place
Yep.
and that we have
Foresight's going to help you solve that.
Yeah, and that
Instead of foresight is going to help you to lean into that, and what emerges after that is going to be glorious.
yeah. I just, again, I know fear sells. I do. I know it does. And I know, we use the excuse, oh, we're just trying to meet people where they are. But as Frank says, we don't want to leave them there either. So if VUCA or BANI is a way for people to at least see themselves briefly in what you're saying, I encourage you to transition quickly to shifting the perspective to a long now, to a future that's alive, to an understanding that this process is not foreign, it's not artificial, it is incredibly natural. And when you lean into that, everything else falls into
It
place.
changes the way you perceive the world. And again, that's why I say, I'm hearing Nora in this. As a matter of fact, I pulled her up because the ALIVE acronym is pretty straightforward. Liminal, I'm in liminal spaces. That's where
Yeah.
the change happens. Everybody, again, this is exactly the same thing. It's like we often hear liminal. We're like, oh, I hope I get out of that liminal space really quickly. And Sonia's whole talk was about staying in liminality as a place where things are like always in flux.
Yeah.
And I know that that's the place where things change, and not to be afraid to be in between spaces because that's how the world works. Or interconnected is pretty straightforward. It's like we're all interconnected. plants to trees to humans to kin to past to cosmos, and it's not this separated thing that foresight often presents us as, like,
Yeah.
let's silo these things so we can understand them. That's not how reality works. Our
Yeah.
vibrant, it might just seem like a word that we use. It's like, oh, look, I'm wearing yellow today at the beach. I'm very vibrant. But vibrancy has to do with plugging into consciousness. There's a vibration in the universe, and when we plug into that vibration, it's not woo-woo, it's real. As a matter of fact, consciousness scientists have seen this over the last 20 years more and more and more. But we are so, hell-bent on other kinds of physical science that we've studied for so long that we haven't realized some of this. I think that first word, abductive, is the hardest one in
Yeah.
there. And I love what Nora says about this. Abductive process is a way to see one context becoming a description of another context. Every abduction may be seen as double or multiple descriptions of some object or place or sequence. So instead of just saying, like, I can relate this to this caused this, induction, deduction. Abduction is like, I need to be able to see the meadow, the whole thing. And I'm not looking at things, I'm not trying to settle them as pieces, like deducting or inducting again. But abductive sees the world as a whole, and I don't understand it by its pieces, I understand it by its totality. That's futures thinking.
Yeah.
And that's why alive, because the word alive starts with the A, but that's why it starts with abduction,
Awesome.
because you can't really lean into liminality, interconnection, vibrancy, or connection to consciousness, and letting things emerge until you understand looking at a meadow and not just the deer and the tree and the grass separate from one another, as foresight often tries to do. Here's a trend, grass. Here's a trend, deer.
Yeah.
Here's a trend,
I
tree. No, all those things make a meadow, and looking
yeah.
at the meadow helps us to understand reality.
It's very aligned with the dragonfly's eye
Exactly.
and the topics and the conversations you share in the holoptic foresight dynamics philosophy. For those of you that are interested, by the way, we just hosted this week our latest community of practice. And for those of you that haven't been a part of those are really, really powerful, not recorded communities of practice that Frank hosts every couple of months for members of the collective. It's part of your membership,
Yeah.
and that all parts to the whole, and that concept is integral to that holoptic foresight dynamics conversation. So
I love this the quote that Stephen puts in by saying that, one of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of being bamboozled or of the bamboozle.
you
And
don't say that word enough, bamboozle.
bamboozle, I like that. And I think that's exactly right, because it's like, it's really hard for people to say, oh, what? We're supposed to lean into abduction and liminality and interconnection. And I think that's why Yvette is pleading with herself and me and
Yeah.
us, as
Yeah.
and all of you together, and we're all in this together, for us to approach foresight from a different angle than this predictive, battling VUCA, siloing things away. Here's a trend, there's a trend, but rather understanding that when we're approaching it this way, as the long now, the meadow, the aliveness, the natural, that is then it doesn't even become about presenting trends that are coming out of this system we're in already anyway.
Yes.
That always blows my mind. I think it blows my mind more than I hear this, people say it.
Mm.
I'm looking for more of this. It's like, why is there not more talk about, like, but these, where are these trends coming from? They're coming from the system we're trying to get out of. It's so weird.
Yeah.
And so when we do that, we start moving into emergent futures, like Sonia was saying, putting your hand in the water like the wayfinders and
Mm.
saying, where's the wind actually wanting to blow us,
Yeah.
and moving with the whole thing. And then our futures becomes less about trending and more about, what is the higher order purpose? What are we transforming into? How do we see what's in our DNA and unlock that? And that's beautiful. That's beautiful future. And I guess the thing I wanted to say out of all of that is, that sounds like something that's just going to be for, like, a retreat. But I don't believe it is. I believe it's for companies. I believe it's for businesses. I believe it's for governments. And we've used it that way. And sometimes we've snuck it in. A lot of times we've snuck it in.
Well,
But the outcomes have been awesome.
yeah, I think what's powerful about the work that, and I'll just, toot our own horn a little bit here, because I think it is a differential for us, is that our framework, natural foresight framework, when you first view it, it looks like, okay, it's another framework. Maybe there's some steps. There aren't. It's more of a plug and play. You pull from it.
And it's meant to be that way so that you can first see it and go like, oh, I get this
For
discovery's
sure.
going
No,
back to
it's
be.
meant to be
Okay,
accessible.
welcome, you're in. Come in.
But my point is that it's built upon the philosophy of HFD. It's built upon the science of complexity and complex adaptive cycles, and it's built upon those methods and that research. And so what ends up happening is it's a tool card that I know has a terrible glare. It's a tool card, it's a template, it's a workshop, but because it's built upon the foundation of the complex science and emergence and alive, the outcomes are much more powerful, much more long lasting,
Yes,
much more human. And that's why I think the way that we do the work here is so powerful, not only because we lead with the fact that it is natural, it's not foreign, it's not artificial, it's truly what we're meant to do and act and think.
that's a great point.
But also just that the framework itself is built on those methods.
You know, something that I don't know if I've really expressed this way, maybe in the ebook, to an extent, of course, obviously, the Alive ebook. But VUCA is not something as an acronym that we do anyway, right? It's just a presentation of like, look, I'm trying to sell foresight to you. And a great way to sell you foresight is to say, we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Don't you need foresight?
Yeah.
So that makes sense, right?
It's the antidote.
Right. But we don't ever try to like do volatility or do uncertainty or do complexity, right? But the Alive acronym, that's another really cool thing about it, is like you literally want to be able to practice abduction, practice liminality,
Yeah.
practice interconnection,
Yeah.
practice vibration,
Yeah.
practice emergence. And
Yeah.
so they're not only an acronym of how the world actually is, but
Yeah.
how do I practice these 5 things as well?
That is interesting. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not just a stake in the ground. Oh God, here we are.
Yeah.
This is the state of the world. And isn't it crappy? It's rather, in its own way, a roadmap on how we lean into our natural abilities and, look at the future and the present and the past in a much more holistic way.
Yeah. We do this in the ebook a little bit, but it's a great thing that we can actually lay out and you could use in your practice too to say like we're going to have a workshop on what does it mean to be more abductive, what does it mean to be liminal, how can I practice these things and lean into them, and then it's going to unlock futures thinking from within me, futures consciousness that is then going to, as exactly you're saying, bleed into the work I do. I might go back and do the same exact workshop, but I'll be approaching it much differently, and the spirit that people will sense coming from us while we're leading these workshops will lead them in a whole different direction than what we might call it a corporate foresight. And I'm not saying by that we don't want foresight in corporations, but corporate foresight has largely started to more and more increasingly leaning into this. How do I control and how do I
think I think in many ways it always has, but it just depends on how you practice it.
It depends on how you practice.
Because what I was going to say was, when you look at the way that we've framed our services and our offerings and our approach with the futures tool or stool, excuse me, which I think was just published in the APF. Was that this past month?
This week.
Yeah.
This week.
Yeah.
So
Time
yeah,
flies. Time is a construct because I don't even know.
That this month? Yes, it was 2 days ago.
No, but honestly, because you wrote it like months ago, and then we reviewed it weeks ago, and so
the new Compass magazine is out, and
it talks about
it has our feature stool.
Yeah. So we have a three-legged stool. One leg is not any more important than the other. But I mention this because if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, but I gotta sell this stuff, and there's different ways to engage with individuals and organizations. And, the future ready leg of the stool really speaks to, foundational concepts. It's the natural foresight framework. It is those tools and methods. And again, there's no, when I share this stool with you, it's not like there are levels that one's higher than the other or first, but it's like
take one leg away, the stool falls
no,
over.
and you need all of them, and
That's right.
and you go to all of them at all times.
That's right.
The second leg of the stool, not in terms of importance, but just in order that I'm sharing them with you, is future empowerment. We often think about our wicked opportunities offerings, and when we talk about complexity and that sort of thing, as part of the empowerment aspect, and just having that sense, mesh, and transform mindset that is so needed in this world. And then futures consciousness or conscious aspect of the stool. This is where we're going to talk about holoptic foresight dynamics. We're going to talk about the dragonfly's journey. You mentioned it's not just about retreats, but we do have a retreat coming up next year if you're interested, which is the quintessential way that you can truly embody a future that's alive is through that retreat. It's not the only way, because I think the dragonfly's journey that we're doing with
That
the
is
communities of
awesome.
practice online is amazing, and people that are really investing in themselves in that process are getting a lot out of it.
Yes.
But I just simply can't wait until next year when we're back
So
in
good.
Maine.
Yeah.
And I think there's more information on our website about the
Yeah, those
retreat
retreats are
already.
fantastic. We're
So
excited that we got to announce that this week.
yeah. So
Registration is open.
don't tell your friends, or do. But yeah, so hard to believe an hour has passed already, but here we are,
Yeah.
nonetheless. And
Goes by
again,
quick, friends.
just to recap, I knew today's episode was gonna be fun, and it was gonna be timely. This is one of those that you could probably listen to it at any time and still have it resonate. Um, how do we break free from the ways that we're viewing the present, the past, and the future to be much more holistic and transformative
Yeah,
in our futuring? And how can we as foresight professionals enable that?
that's it.
That's the
To
question.
be much more holistic and well alive in our future, and as you said,
Yeah.
right? And because I know that that's what we're presenting today is a part of foresight, and it's not really applied to foresight specifically, but then in the end, it changes the way that we will approach the practice of foresight or
Yeah.
futures thinking, whatever we want to call it.
And I also would like to, just as a takeaway, for those of you that see us as thought leaders or as experts, I want you to take away the fact that we are truly always in perpetual beta. And this is
Always.
this is a wonderful example of that, where we, carved out time to create these podcasts, 4 or 5 years ago. And, I still, stand by the VUCA to long now. And yet here we are 5 years later, able to introduce a whole new, framing of that with the Alive acronym and concepts that have already made a difference globally. And my sharing of that is simply that as foresight practitioners, as people in this world, we always have to strive to continue to learn, unlearn, relearn, to continue to, up our abilities, and to understand, what might be a new way of framing, a new way of thinking.
That's right.
And so I just love that you lead us in that very much in our practice, and I very much appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, I mean, we all do it together, and we do it with all of you as well. And um, one of the things that's always resonated, for the past however many years, it's been 13 years that we've been doing KEDGE and the Future School and now TFSX is we've always partnered with people from the outside, and all of our, internal partners and also external partners are part of our family. And so it's one of the reasons that we do these podcasts, even, is because we know that we're not just talking at people, we're talking with
Mhm.
all of you, and you're putting amazing stuff in the chat. And it's always great to have all of you with us. And we just love that there's a movement that's just continually taking us into alternative realities. And I think one of the things that we said at the top of this particular broadcast that maybe we'll end with is that it's not that we're ignoring the poly crisis. When you act like this, it's not like you're ignoring problems. You're not Pollyanna. It's seeing the world for the way it really is. And when that happens, instead of leaning into crisis mind and being stuck in crisis mind, which is what will happen, you acknowledge that we're in crisis, but the way out is not through the solutions inside of the box. It's through seeing the world as it really is, leaning into those ways of living and acting. Because as you know, Einstein said, we cannot solve our present problems with the same level of consciousness that created them in the first
It's
place.
acknowledgement that many of the crises that we are trying to make our way through right now are created by mechanistic, thinking that seeks to take that natural element out of the equation.
That's
And
right.
so it is very much those same concepts that they're trying to drill forth as the solution that cause those problems to
Caused the
begin with.
problem in the first place.
So, anyway,
That's right.
you all have a good rest of your week. Next time we're together, just really briefly, we're going to be talking about extended reality.
Ooh, good one.
Moving from identity crisis to extended reality. I
Yeah.
have no idea when that is, but I'm sure Nicole can potentially tell us at some point. It's probably sometime in July, is what I would guess, because I don't think we're. Yes, July 31st. She had already put that on there. She's the best.
She's
All right, friends, we'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day.
everyone. We love you.
Love ya. Bye.
Bye bye.